Hi, I'm Karla Alexander, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use my ruler, Curves for Squares. So what exactly is Curves for Squares and why might you want to use it? Well, it's really more like a template than it is a ruler. It's a tool that helps you cut half-square triangles with a curve as you see behind me. And you have 6 different sizes to choose from. With that being said, the most important feature on the ruler really is the design of the curves. So let's stop and take a quick look at some samples and you'll see exactly what I mean. For this half-square triangle block to be successful, the seam needs to begin and end in each corner with a 45-degree angle, with the curve in the middle. The 45-degree angle is really important, and when it's cut, it needs to be at least 5/8 of an inch long in order to accommodate the diagonal and outer edge seam allowances. If the angle isn't long enough, your block will end up looking something like this, with the seam running off the edge of the block rather than through the corners. Even though the cut began and ended in the corners, the 45-degree angle wasn't long enough to accommodate the seam allowances. However, when you use the ruler, this is what your block will look like, and you can see how you can count on each seam being centered exactly in each corner. Okay, now let's move on to cutting. Let's check out the ruler with its 6 different sizes. You can use it for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10-inch size squares. I've prepared a 5-inch square to demonstrate the proper placement. I'd place the ruler over the top of the square like this. I'll find the number 5 and trace the placement line underneath the number to the outer edge of the ruler. This is exactly where the corner of the square should be. Align the opposite corner in the same way. Now you can see the placement lines are perfectly aligned with the outer edges of the square. And now my square is ready to be cut. You can also see I have a 9-inch square in place and ready to go as well. One of the features you'll love is the unique non-slip grip only found on Creative Grids rulers. This keeps the ruler from slipping and sliding while making your cuts. And here's a few other great things. The ruler is left-right hand friendly and it's also made in the USA. I think it's a great idea to take a quick practice run on your cutting mat without using any fabric. Putting your pointer finger on top of the cutter like this helps guide the blade as you cut, and you can see how your hand leans and tilts side to side when cutting a curve. You'll be using the same technique when using the ruler. Prepare your squares for cutting by layering them into a fabric deck with 2 squares both right side up. It doesn't matter if the light or dark square is on the top, just that they're both right side up, and that the edges are as even as you can get them. Okay, this deck is ready to be cut. With the ruler in place, put one hand over the top, with your fingers pressed down and close to the edge you're ready to cut. Expose the blade and pull it over to the ruler. With your pointer finger in place, cut approximately 2 inches, leaning and tilting your hand as you go. Walk your fingers up, keeping the pressure on the blade, and continue cutting. Keep the pressure on the blade and carefully walk your fingers up along the edge and continue cutting until you reach the end of the deck. Once the deck is cut, remove the ruler and then shuffle the top layer of one side to the bottom of the deck. The dark fabric for the top block will have a hill, while the dark fabric on the bottom will have a valley. This creates 2 different blocks. Okay, now it's time to sew the curves. Okay, so now I'm ready to sew the curves. First, I like to place a piece of double sticky mounting tape to prepare my sewing machine. While this helps maintain my 1/4-inch seam allowance, I really use it for sewing the curves, and you'll see how it helps align the curved edge as I sew. So to prevent any adhesive residue, I layer a piece of blue painter tape down first. Okay, now I'm ready to sew. First, I'll match the 2 points right side together and place them under the presser foot. Use a needle down position if you have one, otherwise rotate the needle into the fabric each time you stop so the fabric won't shift. Okay, I like to pleat the top layer up in my hand like this, and then I use my pointer finger to direct the fabric and pivot and swing it as I sew. I use this finger on the bottom to align the curve with the edge of the tape. sew down into the curve a couple inches and then stop, and now I'm going to place a placement pin in the edge of the curve a couple of inches from the point, and I'll place it perpendicular to the cut edge of the fabric. And this is so I can make sure that one piece doesn't get longer than the other piece as I'm sewing. Okay, now I'll continue sewing, always aligning with the tape so the last ½ inch of the curve is straight before it goes to the needle. Okay, so now I'm close to the placement pin and I can take it out. I like to use these little nippers to direct the fabric, and I'll pull it over to the tape, continue sewing, there, now I'm almost to the end, and I'll make sure that these 2 points are aligned. So as I said earlier, one piece isn't longer than the other. Don't stretch it, just follow it through. And once I get to the end, I'll cut the thread. Okay, let's take a look at the curve. So rather than being too concerned about the exact size of your block, focus on sewing with a consistent 1/4 inch seam allowance so that all your blocks finish to the same size.